Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing For the Queen by Darrington Press. This is the game designed by Alex Roberts, and this is actually a second edition of that game. It's redone by Darrington Press. It got some nice little magnetic class box. I believe there's redone art, and the basic idea is this is a role-playing game in a box. The idea, and we'll walk you through it right now because honestly it's easy enough to give you the whole entire experience in a very short demo. Well, not the whole experience, but a sample of what the experience would be. But the basic idea is you have a question over here. The queen is under attack, what do you do? Now that question gets shuffled up into the deck. Where you place it depends on how long you want the game. I'm going to leave off to the side because, well, I want it accessible for what I'm doing over here. We have a little bit of a note of the various artists behind the various queens because we have this little thing over here. We have the X card, which is basically a way of any player saying they don't want to engage with any particular question, which is fair. And we have the rules things over here. This is the rule book over here. You're going to go ahead and read through these cards one at a time, and it's just going to give you the rules, just straight at a time, what you do, what's going on. You're all around the table because the queen chose you to be here because she loves you and she knows you love her and all those things. And then a few different rules as far as how the game actually operates. It's 17 cards with rules in them. Very simple and straightforward. From there, you're going to go ahead and choose a queen. Technically, this is part of the rules. You go through all these different illustrated queens. There's no game difference between them. They might drive your actions in some way, but they're double-sided cards, different art. We're going to go ahead and choose that queen. Now, I will say, in this game, you will have a slightly different spin or perspective of how you choose to answer things based on what queen you choose. Some questions might not matter. Some might be answered very differently if you're dealing with, this older queen versus this younger queen. That might alter your experience as far as how you engage with certain questions. But for right now, we're going to keep that older queen over here. We're going to put this here. This is our queen. And then players are going to take turns answering questions from this deck of cards. So I'm actually going to shuffle it up because I don't know if it's been shuffled for my last play. So let's give it a little bit of a shuffle. And we'll go ahead and just answer questions. Now again, remember, this is a role-playing game. There's no real mechanics to it past building a story and a narrative and eventually concluding with the question, the queen is under attack. What do you do? Which all players can answer. But let's go ahead and start off. And I, as one of the players, one of the various members of the group around the table, I'll answer this question. This journey isn't just about diplomatic negotiations. What else do you suspect is going on and why? This is where the players have a chance to start drafting their own narrative of what's going on. Why are you here? What's happening? Build the story as you go, because all games are going to end with this single question. The queen is under attack. What do you do? But what happens and how you answer this question is going to change depending on the questions and the stories that have been built up by you and the other players around the table as you engage with these story cards. So again, this journey isn't just about diplomatic negotiations. What else do you suspect is going on and why? Well, frankly, I think the queen has actually been trying to fight a revolution underground for a long time. There's been an undercurrent of dissatisfaction with the empire, with the kingdom, and I think the queen is not just here to gather us around, but she's worried about which one of us are on her side, which one of us aren't, which of us are aligned with the allegiance of the people who are upset about the way the kingdom is run, versus which of us are actually true loyalists to the queen. Now, by the way I answer that question, by the story I crafted as I go, I've not just defined some of my relationship with the queen, but I've also put thoughts into the minds of the other players around the table. Now they have this narrative of what's happening. Players around the table are starting to mentally shift. Are they for the loyalists? Are they for the queen? Are they against the kingdom? What's going on here? Players are going to start adjusting their own stories based on not just their own answers, but on yours. Let's have another player answer another question. The next person goes, some would say the queen is not your queen. Why do you serve her anyway? See, this actually feeds nicely into what I just said, and that will happen as you play this game. As you play through this game, you'll get these interesting questions that feed off of things that already happened. That was completely random. The way those cards follow each other, shuffle this up, it's just completely random, but you will have those kinds of things. Some would say the queen is not your queen, why do you serve anyway? Might be answered very differently if I hadn't just given the own answer I gave. We'll go with that. Some would say the queen is not your queen. Why do you serve her anyway? Another player might answer, they go ahead and say, well, despite the fact that the kingdom has not always been run the way I want, despite the fact that not everything is happy, and despite the fact that not all people seem to be thrilled with the queen's rule, she's always been someone who helped and guided me and mentored me. She's always been someone who looked out for me, even as not everything is run perfectly, but I acknowledge that it's hard to run a country, it's hard to be a leader, and so I'm not satisfied with everything going on, but she's always had my best interests at heart, and it's hard not to take that into account when I think of my relationship with her, when I think of my relationship to the kingdom. Okay, next question. When was the last time the queen gave you a compliment, and why have her words stayed with you? Now, this is where, depending on the player count, you're going to have, I think it's a 2 to 6 player game, if I'm not mistaken, 2 to 6 players. Depending on the player count, you're going to have different players. And by the way, I don't see a reason you can't play this solo. I think it would be less interesting because the narrative won't be crafted by the other players, just by you. But I think you could play the solo if you wanted. But let's pretend we're playing a 3-player game, so it's a 3rd player now. When was the last time the queen gave you a compliment, and why have her words stayed with you? Now, this could be a pivotal moment. This person, this 3rd person at the table, might choose to go with last week, or the alternatively, it might be 4 years ago. Let's go with the 4 years ago. Honestly, I can't remember the last time the queen paid me a compliment. I remember that she drafted me into her service years ago, and we became close early on, but I feel like it's been forever since she actually appreciated me. I feel like it might have been 7 years ago, and I don't think it was that big a deal in and of itself, but the reason the words stuck with me was because it was 7 years ago. She thanked me for a job well done, but since then I feel she's taken others more into her confidence, left me a bit by the wayside. And it could be because I've been critical of some of the ways she runs the kingdom, but I have her best interests at heart. I just don't agree with everything she's doing. But it's been so long. It's been so very long since she paid me a compliment. Go back to that 1st player, and we'll do 1 or 2 more of these, and then we'll go to the card. We have another one over here. How can people tell just by looking at you that you serve the queen? Do you mind it being so obvious? I wear her colors. I wear her colors with pride. She is a true leader of this country. She has done everything she can. She has suffered through the death of multiple husbands. She has raised children, some who have been murdered and who have been killed in pursuit of defending the country. She has tried and true. And again, this is where it's interesting. This is where you have different cards where, having a young little queen like this over here versus this queen will affect the way you perceive the answers. That's why the art does matter to an extent. I don't know if we need all of them, but the art matters to an extent. So she's had her children killed in defense of the country. She is a little jaded. That makes sense, but she has always looked out for the kingdom above all. You cannot make everyone happy. That's just the way countries are run. But for me, it's so clear that she has sacrificed her blood, her sweat, her toil, her family for this country. And so no, I don't mind it being obvious. I wear her colors with pride. Now this is where the players are all going to go around. Depending on how long you play the game, you might go through half the cards, 2/3 of the cards. If you want a short game, maybe 1/3 of the cards. But you will go through a bunch of the cards, and they all craft a story that all plays off everything that's being done by the players as you go. The way you answer a card is going to be different depending on the story that has been crafted by yourself and others as you play through it. And then eventually, in the deck, you'll hit this card. The queen is under attack. Do you defend her? And that's where all players have a chance to answer this penultimate question, or I guess not penultimate, it's the ultimate question. It's the end question of everything. Players have a chance to engage in the answer. The queen is under attack. Do you defend her? So for the first player I sit there and say, of course I defend her. It is ridiculous and horrifying that the people of this country have turned against her, despite everything she has done to build a safer, more prosperous kingdom. If they can't see what she has sacrificed, if they can't see what she has done, that is on them. Of course I rise to her defense. She deserves to be here. She belongs here, and she has given up everything for this kingdom. The people who don't see that are ungrateful. Maybe the 3rd player, who is most discontent, might answer, no. While once upon a time I respected the queen, while once upon a time I believed in everything she was doing, it's clear that years and years of making hard decisions, it's clear that years and years of making decisions that prioritize some over others, even though it's meant for the good of the kingdom, and even though I believe her intent is noble, it has jaded her, it has changed her, and it has been for the kingdom, it has done the kingdom a disservice. I respect everything she has done, but it's hard, as much as it pains me to say this. She's not the queen I once served. She's not the queen I grew to love. She's now a remnant and a symbol, an emblem of a civilization that needs to change. And as much as it hurts me, and as much as I won't lift my own sword against her, I won't defend her. I think it's in the kingdom's best interests if she's no longer the queen. That's For the Queen. That is how you play For the Queen. The general idea of For the Queen is there's a bunch of questions being asked, a whole stack full of questions, each crafting a bit of a story, each giving the other players a chance to answer, to build a story, to build a narrative, together at the table, to go through a role-playing experience, and then to eventually answer the question, the queen is under attack, do you defend her? That's the game. That's how it plays. Let's talk about my review. First of all, production-wise, and this won't follow my usual sequence, my usual format, but I won't go into the whole what I like, don't like, and see what's not liking. I'll say ease of play, incredible. 17 tiny little rule cards. I mean, the text on this is huge, so you have like a bunch of cards to go through. Half of them are still flavor text. It's an incredibly easy game to get up and running. It can run a little long, especially if you play a longer game. Like, you can play a short game of this in maybe half an hour, but it takes time to build that story, and you don't want to rush people. I mean, I went through 4 questions, and I could have gone more and more into it. This is a game that can take time. Small form factor, relatively affordable price point, easy to learn, but it can run a little longer, especially if you're playing a middle or longer game. As far as my overall opinion of the game, and this is where it's basically just going to go into straight into opinion, because frankly, this isn't the game for me. This is a very much an RPG game. It's a game that's all about the story being told. It's all about crafting a narrative. And I appreciate that to a degree, but I don't think that's my go-to genre. I like mechanics above all else. I can lean into the role-playing. I can, even this game is actually a good idea because both things are true. This is not a game for me. This is not a game I'll be keeping, and this is not the kind of experience I'll play. I also think it's a very good experience for what it's trying to do. I have some small nitpicks we'll get into shortly, but I think it's a very good experience for what it's trying to do. I think it allows the players to craft a story, to build off what other players are doing. If you're looking for that kind of story prompt, basically what is it called again? Improv. If you're looking for that improv story prompt kind of game, I think this does a great job. And I think that one of the things I find fascinating is how differently the same cards will be answered depending on how previous story elements were built around the table. So there's a lot of gameplay in this box. Despite the same ending question every single time, there is a lot of gameplay in this box that is intriguing. So overall, I think this is a very well done game that allows players who want that RPG feel to engage in it and to bring out those RPG elements. If you are someone who's trying to get your group or your friends into RPGs, I think this is a good starting off point. For me, it's still ultimately RPG above all else. There's no gameplay mechanics. This is all about crafting that story, and as much as I appreciate it, that's not what I'm here for. It's not what I look for in games. It's something that to me complements a set of mechanics, but for me, story on its own, I prefer a book. If it's just about the story, if it's just about the crafting of the story, that's not why I'm here. I don't mind story interwoven in mechanics, but on its own, it's not for me. So I don't think For the Queen is for me, but I think it does do a good job at what it's trying to do for the target audience, but you should know the target audience. No mechanics, pure 100% role-playing. As far as some small other nitpicks to get into, I do wish there was more than one card. I think that the story that's being crafted along the way is excellent, but I wish there were more than one card you could come upon. I wish there were like even 3 or 4 cards that had a ultimate question at the end, and you didn't know which one was coming. And I wish that for 2 reasons. I think there'd be more variety to the gameplay, but more importantly, it means that right now the players are all answering the questions, knowing the card that's coming, and I think that affects things. I think that affects the story that you're telling. The story could be different in different ways. You could have a question of, the queen approaches you, I don't know, to be her next husband. She wants to marry you. I have no clue. You could have different questions with drastically different ways that everything led up to that moment. And I think it could go both ways. I think if you players wanted to craft a story knowing which card is coming, they can shuffle that in. And if they didn't, they can shuffle a few cards in, being uncertain which one is going to be the game-ending question. So I wish there were more cards in the experience that would allow players to interact with the experience without knowing for sure exactly what's coming. That's one complaint. I also wish these cards looked different, by the way. There's no difference between the way this card looks. Like, the back should look the same, obviously, but make the front more obviously different so it stands out. It's a little, I wish you could just, riffle through these cards and just pull out the card, and that would also help if you had more cards, although that's not relevant. But yeah, I wish the card would stand out a bit. And then the last thing I'll note, and this is obviously going to be group dependent, but I think a lot of the cards, especially if you're dealing with a younger queen, a younger queen or whatnot, a lot of the cards can lend themselves to a degree of suggestive romantic talk or conversations that have their own degree of entertainment or humor, but I don't know if that necessarily was the experience. I think that to the game's credit, it allows for a bit of an NSFW approach to it just by the players playing it, but also I think some cards kind of lean that way in a weird way. So again, I'm not sure if that's necessarily a complaint so much as a commentary. This is a game that I've played and had serious conversations and development like you just saw, and this is a game where you can start getting into romantic interests based on the cards being present, which again, arguably, I think would be interesting if you had different types of questions at the end of it, but I think it feels a little bit out of place when you know the ultimate question is, the queen is under attack, do you defend her? And so that's what we have over here for the queen. Rating-wise, I don't know if I really want to rate this one. Again, it's not, I think that's primarily because it's not my genre. It's not my genre of games. So strictly speaking, according to my rating scale, this would be a 2 out of 5. It's a game I'm not really interested in playing again. It's not for me. But I also think it is very good at what it's trying to do. I think this is an experience that I've enjoyed, despite it not being my genre. It's just not an experience I'm going to pull out because I want more mechanics-heavy games. So, strict rating-wise, I think it'd be a 2 out of 5, but I almost don't want to rate it because I think it's good for someone who's looking for an intro RPG experience. I'm just not that person. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.